My name is Evelyn Carter, and I was 76 years old on the day my children decided that my life was no longer mine to live. It was the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, a day I had circled on my calendar weeks ago. Thanksgiving had always meant something to me. It wasn't just about food or tradition. It was the one day of the year when I could still pretend that my family needed me, that I belonged somewhere beyond the quiet walls of my small house. That morning, I took my time getting ready. I wore my navy blue dress, the one I had last worn to my son Andrew's wedding. It still fit, though a little looser now. I pinned my silver hair neatly into a bun, dabbed a touch of blush on my cheeks, and looked at myself in the mirror longer than usual. "You still have dignity, Evelyn," I whispered. I had lived alone for 7 years. 7 years since my husband, Robert, collapsed in our kitchen one quiet Sunday morning and never stood up again. 40 years of marriage ended in less than 40 seconds. After the funeral, the house became unbearably silent. At first, Andrew and my daughter Melissa visited often. They called. They checked in. They asked if I needed anything. Then life happened. Careers, kids, distractions. Slowly, their concern faded into polite obligation. I never complained. I didn't want to be that mother, the needy one, the guilt-inducing one. So when Andrew invited me over that Tuesday, I felt a cautious sense of hope. Maybe they just wanted to plan Thanksgiving. Maybe they needed my old recipes. Maybe, just maybe, they missed me. I drove myself to their house, my hands steady on the wheel. The front door was unlocked, and I could hear voices inside. Laughter. Familiar sounds. My heart lifted slightly. I stepped inside. Andrew and Melissa were sitting on the couch. Andrew's wife, Karen, stood near the kitchen counter, holding a mug of coffee. When she saw me, she gave a small smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Mom," Andrew said. "Good, you're here. Sit down." Something about his tone made my stomach tighten. I sat on the edge of the couch, folding my purse neatly on my lap. Karen glanced at Melissa. "Should we tell her now?" "Tell me what?" I looked between them. "Tell me what?" I asked gently. Andrew cleared his throat. "Mom, we've been talking." That sentence always came before bad news. "Talking about what, sweetheart?" I asked. Melissa avoided my eyes. "About your situation." "My situation." "I'm fine," I said. "I manage perfectly well." Karen sighed softly, as if exhausted. "Mom, don't take this the wrong way." I had learned long ago that whenever someone said that, they absolutely meant it the wrong way. "You live alone," Melissa continued. "What if something happens? What if you fall?" "I've lived alone for 7 years," I replied calmly. Nothing has happened. Karen set her mug down with a sharp clink. "Not yet." That word, yet, hung in the air like a threat. Andrew leaned forward. "We think it's time you moved somewhere safer." "Where?" I asked. The room went quiet. Melissa took a breath. "There's a really nice nursing home nearby." The word nursing home echoed in my head, loud and hollow. "I don't need a nursing home," I said. "I cook, I clean, I drive, I take my walks every morning." "This isn't about what you can do," Karen said. "It's about what could happen." I looked at my children, the children I had raised, sacrificed for, protected. "When did you decide this?" I asked. Andrew hesitated. "We've been discussing it for a while." "How long is a while?" I pressed. Melissa finally looked at me. "Since last year." Last year. All those visits, all those smiles, all those conversations, while they were quietly planning to remove me from my own life. "I wasn't included in these discussions," I said softly. Karen crossed her arms. "We didn't want to upset you." I almost laughed at that. Andrew continued, "We've already found a place. It's clean, professional, well-run. They have activities, medical staff, everything." "You already found a place," I repeated. "Yes," Melissa said. "It's for your own good." Those words. The same words people use to justify taking control away from someone else. "I'm not sick. I said. I'm not confused. No one said you were, Karen replied quickly. But you're old, Mom. Old. I felt something shift inside me then. Not anger, not fear. Something colder. You want me out of my house, I said. Andrew avoided my gaze. It's not safe for you to be alone anymore. My house is paid off, I said. I've lived there for 30 years. And now it's time for the next step, Karen said. We've already arranged everything. Arranged everything. Melissa slid a folder across the coffee table toward me. Just some paperwork, she said. Nothing complicated. I stared at the folder. Paperwork for what? Admission forms, Andrew said. Medical consent, financial coordination. I looked at my children again. They weren't asking, they were informing. I need time, I said. Karen shook her head. There isn't much time, Mom. The room won't stay available. I opened the folder slowly. Pages and pages of forms stared back at me, thick with legal language. Sign here, Melissa said, pointing. Something inside me went completely still. You already decided, I said. You just need my signature. Andrew reached for my hand. We just want what's best for you. I thought of the nights I stayed awake sewing clothes so Andrew could have new shoes. The double shifts. The sacrifices. The years. I closed the folder. I'll think about it, I said. Karen's lips tightened. We were hoping you'd be reasonable. I stood up slowly. I am being reasonable. I'm going home. Melissa stood too. Mom, please don't make this harder than it has to be. Harder for whom? I picked up my purse. I'll call you, I said. Karen exhaled sharply. Please don't drag this out. I walked out without looking back. That night, I sat alone at my kitchen table, staring at my hands. The house was quiet, just as it always was. But for the first time, the silence felt different. I wasn't scared. I was alert. Because I realized something very important that night. They thought I was helpless. And they were about to make a very expensive mistake. 3 days later, Andrew came to my house with boxes. He didn't knock. He used the spare key I had given him years ago, back when I trusted that it would only be used in emergencies. Mom! He called out, forcing cheer into his voice. We're here! We. Karen followed him inside, already surveying my living room as if it no longer belonged to me. Melissa arrived a few minutes later, her phone pressed to her ear, finishing a work call. None of them asked how I was feeling. None of them asked if I was ready. They had already decided. We just need to pack the essentials, Karen said. The rest can be sorted later. I stood near the kitchen doorway, watching strangers move through the home I had lived in for over 3 decades. Every piece of furniture held a memory. Every corner echoed with a version of myself that no longer existed. You don't have to rush, I said quietly. Andrew avoided my eyes. The facility is expecting you today. Facility, not home, not choice. Facility. Karen handed me the same folder again, thicker now, with colorful tabs marking pages. If you could sign these before we leave, she said, it'll make everything smoother. I looked at the papers. Then I looked at my children. What happens if I don't? I asked. Melissa paused, her fingers tightening around her phone. Mom, don't do this. Do what? I asked. Ask a question? Karen sighed dramatically. This is exactly why we're worried. You're being difficult. Difficult. That word followed women like me through our entire lives. Difficult when we asked. Difficult when we resisted. Difficult when we refused to disappear quietly. I signed. Not because I agreed. Not because I was confused. But because I needed to see how far they were willing to go. The drive to the nursing home was quiet. Karen sat in the front seat beside Andrew. I sat in the back, staring out the window as my neighborhood faded behind us. The grocery store where the cashier knew my name. The park where I walked every morning. The library where I spent my afternoons reading. No one spoke. When we arrived, the building looked clean and modern from the outside. Neutral colors, wide windows, A banner near the entrance read, "Caring for Life's Next Chapter." Inside, the air smelled faintly of disinfectant and overcooked vegetables. A woman in a navy blazer approached us. "Mrs. Carter?" she asked, smiling professionally. "Yes," I replied. "I'm Denise, the admissions coordinator. We've been expecting you." Of course they had. Karen immediately stepped forward. "Thank you so much for fitting her in on such short notice." Her, not me. Denise gestured toward a clipboard. "Just a few more signatures." Andrew handed over the folder as if rehearsed. Denise scanned the documents quickly. "Room 214, she said. "Second floor. Single occupancy." "Single?" Melissa asked. "Not shared?" "We believe in personal dignity," Denise replied. I almost laughed. They wheeled my suitcase down the hallway while my children followed behind me. Residents sat in chairs lining the walls, staring at televisions that weren't turned on. Some looked asleep. Others looked lost. I felt eyes on me as I passed. Room 214 was small but clean. A narrow bed, a dresser, a single window facing the parking lot. "This will be home now," Karen said brightly. "Home." Andrew hugged me quickly, stiffly. "We'll visit," he said. "Once things settle." Karen checked her watch. "We really have to go." Melissa kissed my cheek. "Please don't make this harder than it needs to be." Then they left. Just like that. The door closed behind them with a soft click that sounded final. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I observed. That first night, I learned many things. Dinner was served at exactly 5 p.m. If you arrived late, you didn't eat. A nurse called my name without looking at my face. "Medication time." "I don't take medication," I said. She frowned. "It says here you do." I didn't, but I swallowed the pill anyway. The next morning, a caregiver entered my room without knocking. "Up," she said. "Breakfast." I looked at the clock. 6 a.m. "I usually wake up at 7, I said. She shrugged. "Schedule's the schedule." By the third day, I noticed the pattern. The staff wasn't cruel. They were indifferent. And indifference hurts more than cruelty. No one asked about my life. No one asked about my past. No one asked what I wanted. I was a body to be managed, a name on a chart, a room number. On the fourth day, I met Margaret. She was 81 and sharp as a blade. "You're new," she said, sitting beside me during afternoon recreation. "I am," I replied. "They put you here, or did you come willingly?" "They put me," I said. She nodded knowingly. "They always do." That night, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling and thought about the first time I had held Andrew. How small he was. How fiercely I had loved him. How certain I was that my sacrifices would mean something. I thought about the years I worked 2 jobs, the money I gave, the help I offered without being asked. And slowly, painfully, a realization settled in. They didn't see me as a mother anymore. They saw me as a liability. On the 5th day, I asked to see the administrator. Denise returned, her professional smile firmly in place. "Is there a problem, Mrs. Carter?" "No," I said calmly. "I'd just like to understand how this place is run." She seemed surprised. "Well, we're privately managed. We have investors, a board." I nodded. "I see." As she spoke, I watched her carefully. Something about her tone changed when she mentioned the word investors. That night, after lights out, I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. I hadn't told my children, but I never went anywhere without it. I opened my email, scrolled, and stopped. There it was. An old message from 20 years ago. A confirmation, a signature, a name, mine. I closed my eyes. So this was how they wanted to play it. They thought this place was my end. They had no idea it was only the beginning. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was afraid, but because my mind was finally awake. The email on my phone was old, so old that I had almost forgotten it existed, dated nearly 20 years back. The subject line was simple and unremarkable, the kind of thing most people would delete without opening. Investment confirmation, Carter Holdings. My name, my signature. My breath slowed as I read it again. I remembered that time in my life clearly now. Robert was still alive then. We had just sold a small piece of land my aunt had left me. I didn't want to spend the money foolishly, and Robert insisted we speak to a financial advisor. That money should work for you, he'd said, quietly, in the background. The opportunity had seemed safe. A long-term investment in senior housing, low involvement, stable returns. I hadn't needed the income at the time, so everything had been reinvested automatically. Over the years, the paperwork arrived. I filed it away. Life moved on. Grief came. Responsibilities piled up. And eventually, I stopped thinking about it altogether. Until now. The next morning, I asked the nurse for access to a private phone. I need to make a call, I said calmly. She looked hesitant. We usually schedule calls during family hours. This is business, I replied. Something in my voice must have changed, because she nodded and pointed me toward a small office near the nurse's station. I dialed the number listed in the email. It rang twice. Carter Holdings, this is James Whitmore. My hands were steady. This is Evelyn Carter, I said. I believe you manage one of my investments. There was a pause. Then, yes, Mrs. Carter. We've been trying to reach you for years. I almost smiled. You've done a good job, I said. It's time we spoke. An hour later, I knew everything. The nursing home, Ridgeview Senior Living, was one of 3 properties under a larger umbrella. I wasn't just an investor. I was a major stakeholder. Silent, patient, forgotten. James was careful with his words. Mrs. Carter, if you'd like, we can arrange a review meeting immediately. I'd prefer that, I said, quietly. That afternoon, Denise, the admissions coordinator, stopped me in the hallway. Mrs. Carter, she said politely, is everything all right? Perfectly, I replied. I'll be having a few meetings this week. She blinked. Meetings? Yes. I didn't elaborate. Over the next 2 days, I observed everything. The way staff spoke to residents when they thought no one important was listening. The shortcuts, the indifference, the corners cut to save time. I wrote everything down, names, dates, times. On Thursday morning, I asked to see the administrator. This time, I wasn't asking politely. The administrator, Mr. Collins, was a tall man with carefully combed hair and a voice practiced in authority. Yes, Mrs. Carter? He asked. How can I help you? I have concerns, I said, handing him a neatly folded list. He glanced at it briefly and smiled thinly. We'll look into it. I don't think you understand, I replied. I need formal answers. His smile faltered. Mrs. Carter, he said slowly, your family placed you here. Medical decisions are— I am fully competent, I said, and I'd like a meeting with the board. He laughed softly. The board doesn't meet with residents. I'm not a resident, I said. Not in the way you think. His eyes narrowed. Excuse me? I suggest you check your records, I said calmly. Before Friday. I left his office without another word. That afternoon, my phone rang. It was Andrew. Mom, he said, irritation thinly veiled. We heard you've been asking questions. I have, I replied. You're causing trouble, Karen's voice cut in from the background. This is exactly what we were afraid of. I'm comfortable, I said. Very comfortable. That's not the point, Melissa snapped. You're embarrassing us. I almost laughed. I won't be coming home for Thanksgiving, Andrew said sharply. We need some space. I understand, I replied. They hung up. Friday morning, James Whitmore arrived at Ridgeview. So did 2 attorneys. So did 3 members of the board. The conference room was suddenly very full. Mr. Collins looked pale. Denise stood silently against the wall. James cleared his throat. Thank you all for coming on short notice. We're here at the request of Mrs. Evelyn Carter. Every head turned toward me. I sat at the end of the table, hands folded neatly in my lap. Mrs. Carter, one of the board members said carefully, can you explain why you requested this meeting? Yes, I said. I'd like to discuss operational concerns and my position here. Your position? Mr. Collins echoed weakly. James slid a folder across the table. Mrs. Carter is not only a resident, he said. She is one of the original investors in this property. The room went silent. Mr. Collins stared at the folder. That's not possible. James opened it. Her name is on the deed. I met Mr. Collins' eyes. For 20 years, I said softly, I trusted this place to operate with dignity. No one spoke. I'm going to stay, I continued, but not as you've treated me. Denise swallowed hard. And, beginning today, James added, we'll be conducting a full internal review. The meeting ended quickly after that. As I returned to my room, my phone buzzed again. A message from Melissa. What did you do? I looked out the window at the parking lot below. For the first time since I arrived, I smiled. Because now they knew something was wrong. They just didn't know how much. By Monday morning, Ridgeview Senior Living felt like a different place. Not louder, not chaotic, quieter. The kind of quiet that comes when people realize they've been seen. Staff members walked straighter. Voices softened. Doors closed more carefully. The clipboard Denise carried everywhere now looked heavier in her hands, as if every line on it mattered. James Whitmore arrived early. 2 attorneys followed. This time, no one asked why. The review began immediately. I wasn't present for most of it. That wasn't my role. Power, when used properly, doesn't hover. It observes. From my room, I could hear fragments, measured voices, the shuffle of papers, the low murmur of explanations that sounded suspiciously like excuses. Around noon, Mr. Collins was escorted out of the building. No shouting, no scene. Just a quiet walk to the parking lot. His shoulders stiff, his authority already gone. By evening, a notice was placed at the front desk. Interim administrator appointed. I read it once and returned to my chair by the window. That night, my phone rang again. This time, it was Karen. Her voice was different now. Careful, strained. Mom, we need to talk. We're talking, I replied calmly. There was a pause. Then, we didn't know. No, I said gently. You didn't ask. Andrew joined the call. Mom, this whole situation is getting out of hand. It's already been handled, I replied. Melissa's voice broke through next. The board called us. They said you're not just staying there. I waited. They said you own part of it. I closed my eyes briefly. I invested, I said. A long time ago? No one spoke. Finally, Andrew said, Why didn't you tell us? I looked around my room. The neatly made bed, the framed photo of Robert on the dresser, the quiet dignity I had rebuilt piece by piece.
You didn't ask, I repeated. And when you made decisions for me, you didn't think I needed to explain myself. That's not fair, Karen said quickly. We were trying to help. By removing me from my home, I replied, without a conversation. Silence returned. Then Melissa asked the question I knew was coming. So, what happens now? I opened my eyes. Now, I said, I decide. The board reconvened on Wednesday. This time I attended, not as a resident, as myself. The conference room was bright, modern, and suddenly very attentive to my comfort. A padded chair was pulled out for me before I even reached the table. Mrs. Carter, the interim administrator said respectfully, Thank you for joining us. I nodded once. James spoke first. The internal review has confirmed several issues in daily operations, staffing conduct, and cost cutting practices that compromised resident dignity. I listened. One board member cleared his throat. We want to assure you that changes are already underway. I'm aware, I said. Another leaned forward. Mrs. Carter, given your position, we'd like to know your expectations. I folded my hands. I don't want control, I said. I want standards. They waited. This is a place where people come at the end of long lives, I continued. They deserve respect, not efficiency disguised as care. Heads nodded. I want transparent oversight, I said. Staff training that focuses on dignity, not speed. And I want a resident advocate, someone who answers to the board, not management. James smiled slightly. That can be arranged. And finally, I added, I will remain here, by choice. The room was silent again. Not as a symbol, I said, as a reminder. The board approved every request, unanimously. The next call from my children came that evening. This time they sounded smaller. Mom, Andrew said carefully, we'd like to visit. I didn't answer immediately. Not to argue, Karen added quickly. We just want to talk. On Sunday, I said, in the common room. There was a breath of relief on the other end of the line. Thank you, Melissa said softly. I ended the call and returned to my chair. I wasn't nervous, I was ready. Sunday afternoon arrived quietly. Sunlight filtered through the tall windows of the common room. A few residents sat nearby, chatting softly or reading. The atmosphere was calm, deliberately so. My children arrived together. They looked around as they approached me. Andrew noticed the staff greeting me by name. Karen saw the way people paused respectfully when they passed. Melissa noticed Denise, standing straighter now, offer me tea before anyone else. They sat down across from me. No one spoke at first. Finally, Andrew said, We messed up. I studied his face, the familiar lines, the uncertainty. You decided for me, I said. That's not the same as caring for me. Karen's eyes filled with tears. We thought you were fading. I shook my head gently. I was quiet. There's a difference. Melissa swallowed. When they told us about the investment, we were shocked. I know. Why didn't you ever say anything? She asked. I smiled faintly. Because I didn't need to. Andrew leaned forward. We assumed after Dad died that you didn't want to deal with finances anymore. I dealt with them just fine. I said I simply didn't announce it. Silence settled again. Then Karen asked, Do you hate us? I looked at her for a long moment. No, I said, but I won't pretend nothing happened. Andrew nodded slowly. What do you want from us? I considered the question carefully. Respect, I said, not permission, not control. Melissa nodded. We can do that. We'll do better, Andrew said. I believed he meant it, but belief, I had learned, didn't require surrender. Weeks passed, Ridgeview changed, staff turnover stabilized, complaints dropped. The advocate I requested became a visible presence. Listening, documenting, acting. Residents noticed, so did families. I stayed. Not because I had to, because I chose to. My children visited occasionally, polite, careful, learning new boundaries. I welcomed them on my terms. One afternoon, James stopped by my room. We've had offers, he said carefully, to buy out your stake. I smiled. I'm not selling. He nodded. I didn't think you would. After he left, I looked out the window again. The parking lot was full, life continuing. I thought of the day my children placed me here, confident, rushed, certain they knew best. They hadn't meant harm, but harm doesn't require intention. It requires silence. I was silent no longer. and I didn't need to raise my voice to be heard.